Yo, what is going on, everybody? This is Beanie and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be going over the June rewards and all the other cards that came out in the most recent content release. We're only going to be going over the diamond cards that came out, even though, actually not only, we are going to be going over one gold card that I think is very notable and a card that I think that maybe you should check out. But aside from that, it's going to be strictly diamonds that they released the other day. So with that being said, yeah, let's go ahead and get into it. Okay, the first card that we're going to go over is a card that you earn through the positional programs. It is the 86 overall Steve Garvey, and this is a card that is severely limited by the position that he plays. He is a first baseman. He doesn't have any other secondaries, and because of that, you really want a guy that's a really great hitter. And the fact is, this guy is only an average hitter in this game. Maybe with this game's engine, maybe even a below average hitter. The fact that he only has 51 power versus righties is very, very limiting for this card, because most of the time you're going to be facing righty pitchers. That's a bit less this year. You'll face a lot more lefties this year, and he's certainly serviceable versus lefties. 83-70 is solid, but there are better options out there. He's just not a very appealing card because of that. So I would do the position program just because, you know, it leads up into the career arcs and eventually the immortal programs and all that. But other than that, I don't really see a whole lot of utility out of this card. He is a good defender, and I mean, he's not really all that fast or anything, but for a first baseman, he's not slow. So, you know, I don't know. I guess if you value defense a little bit, then he might be pretty good over there, because he is one of the better defensive first basemen. But outside of that, I just don't really see a lot that's appealing about this card. And for that reason, I ended up giving him a fag of a 5.7. Okay, next up we have the gold card that I was talking about, the 80 overall Trevor Rosenthal, and I love this card. I think that this card is going to have a lot of utility on your team. I really like this card for maybe some events that he's eligible for. He could be a way of getting a really good reliever into your bullpen without having to, you know, like bump up your overall too much. It'll keep your overall down because you don't have to put like a 90 overall diamond in there. And I think this guy will provide similar production for you. His per nines are fine. They're not, you know, amazing. They're not 100 plus or anything like that. But 80-92, that's enough to shrink your opponent's PCI to a point to where it's going to be uncomfortable for him. And his stuff is absolutely out of this world. He has a 98 mile an hour fastball, a good 88 mile an hour circle change to go along with it, a good slider, a good curveball to go along with that. Overall, just a really, really, really solid pitcher. Trevor Rosenthal has always been one of those guys that has played above his rating for me. Ever since MLB 15, back whenever he was a really high gold card, he always played above that. He always felt like one of the best relievers I had on my team whenever I decided to use him. So I'm pretty excited for this card coming out, because as soon as I am able to pick this card up, I'm going to get him and I'm going to try him out, and I think he's going to be pretty good. So for those reasons, I gave him a fag of a 7.7. Very, very good score. A lot of people maybe kind of skeptical of that score because I'm about to rate a few guys that you might think are better below that, but that's how much I believe in this card. I think a guy that can throw 98 with a good circle change, slider, curveball, good per nines, I think that card has a lot of value, and I think it's going to play up from that 80 overall. And I think that it is kind of brought down a little bit by his control and his walk per nine and stuff. So yeah, 7.7 for the Trevor Rosenthal. Next up, the Zach Cozart, the 85 overall Zach Cozart. You get this card through the ticket counter, and I don't know if I would say that he's worth the high price point that has been put on him. I think he's over 3,000 tickets or close to 3,000 tickets to acquire him. But this card, I could see this card being really, really good on your team. I like him more as a bench player than I do as a starter. Maybe if you have a left-handed shortstop or something like that, he could be utilized that way. But basically what you're getting with this guy is a guy that doesn't have a lot of speed, but is solid defensively and can really, really hit. Against righties, he's very competent, 77, 72. That's enough to be fairly effective. But against lefties, he kills it. 102, 80 with 76 vision. You're going to have a decent-sized PCI, and he's got enough power to hit the ball out of the ballpark. Just a solid overall hitter. Something else that I've noticed is it seems to be a little bit more important this year is discipline. I know that I check swing a lot, and it seems like guys with low discipline, it's damn near impossible to check swing with those guys. So that 90 discipline, while I don't think it's all that important, I do think that's a nice little boost. Also, you don't lose a whole lot in the field with this guy. He doesn't have the strongest arm, but honestly, at shortstop, it's important, but I think some people like to overstate how important arm strength is, really across the board, but especially for infielders. So I don't really knock this guy too much for that. The only thing that kind of knocked this card down a good bit was the fact that he plays shortstop and he doesn't have a lot of speed. And generally, if you're going to get any speed on your team, shortstop is one of the positions where you want to try to get it. And he doesn't have that, so that is kind of a minus for this card. But overall, very solid card, and I ended up giving him a fag of a 7.0. You know, now that I'm looking at it, I may have been a little high on that Trevor Rosenthal card. I don't know, man. I really like that card. 7.7 does seem pretty high, but I'm going to stick by it. I think it's right. But if you guys disagree with me, I won't put up too much of a fight on that one. I'm not going to die on that hill. A 7.0 would probably be pretty reasonable for him, but he's always just played up for me, so yeah, I'm going to stick with it. But the other ticket counter card that we need to review next is the 86 overall Chris Archer, and this is another guy that, kind of like that Trevor Rosenthal, has always played way above his attributes. But I've kind of messed around with this card, not online, but I've kind of looked at how he played offline. I recreated his attributes and everything offline just to kind of see if he had the same kind of thing going on, and how it looked coming in. I even like hit against him a couple times just to kind of see what he was all about. And I know that doesn't really replicate online all that much. But this year, I'm a little more skeptical of this card, mainly because hitting is so much different, and you can't get by on pure velocity as much anymore. It's a lot harder to do that. You need really good per-nines, and you need a lot of good like breaking stuff, and you need to be able to locate and stuff like that. And those are all kind of things that this Chris Archer doesn't do at an elite level. He just does it at a very solid level. So I'm not going to be as high on this card as I would have been if this card would have been in MLB 17 or something like that, but I still think this is a very solid card. 80, 85 hitting K per 9, solid. 67 walk per 9. He's not going to be pinpoint accurate, but he's not, I mean, you're going to be fine with him if you're halfway decent with analog pitching. And his stuff is very good, but it's not, I think it's deceptively average. Like if you look at 92, 95 break, you're like, oh man, that's going to be fantastic. But the thing that gives me so much pause with this card is the fact that he doesn't have that big of a delta between his slider, changeup, and his fastballs. He throws everything pretty hard. A 10-mile-an-hour difference between your four seam and your changeup is decent enough, but it's not really all that great. And also, I don't know, man, there's just something about this card that's giving me a lot of pause. And I think it's the speed differential, but it's also a few other things. His delivery doesn't seem to be as deceptive as it has been in the past, at least to me. But overall, if you pick up this card, I think that he will do a great job as like a good number 4 or a really good number 5 at this point in the year. But don't expect him to come out and be like an ace level guy. So for those reasons, I ended up giving him a fag of a 7.0. Next up is the Battle Royale reward Juan Marichal. And this is a perfect case of a card that I would have been way down on last year, that I would not have liked at all last year. I would have loved the Archer, hated this card. But this year, I like this card a lot more. And it's basically for one simple reason. Speed change seems to be so overpowered in this game. Being able to finesse your opponent and things like that, it's invaluable. I would like it if this guy had better per nines. His hit per nine is great, but his K per nine is just, you know, it's not that great at all. So, but if you combine them, you get kind of average hit and K per nine, basically. He has pinpoint control, though. He's going to be able to spot the ball wherever he wants on command. That's not going to be an issue for you. His velocity isn't great. He only throws 93, but as I said earlier, velocity really isn't that important if that's all you have. If you have some other things to complement it, it can be very, very good. But if you're just a flamethrower, it's not going to work out all that well for you. And on the other end, if you're not a flamethrower, but you have other good things going for you, you can be a fantastic pitcher. And that's kind of where this Juan Marichal falls. Look at that delta between the four seam and the changeup, 21 miles per hour. That is filthy. If you kind of pitch backwards with this guy and really pound that changeup in there, whenever you throw that 93 mile an hour fastball, it's going to look a lot harder than 93 miles per hour. And the thing I love about this card is is every single pitch, it kind of goes down, it kind of hits every speed that you could ever want. You've got 93 on the fastball, 85 on the slider, go down about 5 miles per hour to the changeup or to the curveball. Then you go down another 5 to the screwball. Then you go down another 5 to the changeup. He's got like all the speed brackets taken care of. So wherever your opponent's bat speed is at that point in the game, you can exploit it. I think that that's very valuable with this card. And I think that this is going to be a card that, because he doesn't throw all that hard and he doesn't have the best per nines, he might get overlooked a little bit, and you could scoop him up on the market for a lot cheaper than the value that he's actually going to give you. So for those reasons, I ended up giving this guy a very solid fag of a 7.5. I still would like it if he had better per nines, and I still would like it if he threw a little bit harder, but all the other stuff really works for this card. Okay, next up is the 93 overall Ernie Banks, and this might be the best position player card that they've released so far this year that isn't an Immortal. Obviously, probably the best card that's attainable right now is the Vlad, but outside of him, I think that this Ernie Banks might be one of the better cards in the game. You know, he's obviously not quite Immortal level, but he's almost as good as you can get without hitting that level. He has great vision, so your PCI isn't going to be a problem. Versus righties, you know, 78 contact is but it's workable. But he has 96 power to go with it, so you're going to be hitting tons of dingers. And then against lefties, 116, 87. You lose a little bit of power, but you have a ton of contact to make up for it. He's going to be a demon versus both sides of the plate. And you might think you might lose a ton of defense for playing this guy. Wrong. Whether you play this guy at shortstop or at third base, he is going to be well above average defensively. He has a very strong arm. He has good reaction. He has a reliable glove. Everything that you could really want in a defender. The only downside to this card is that he's not fast. And like I said, for the Zach Cozart at shortstop, you tend to want to have a faster guy if you're trying to get that on your team. But I think I'm more than willing to sacrifice a little bit of that speed in order to get this bat and that defense into my lineup. For those reasons, I gave this card, I think, so far, this is the best grade that I've given to a position player. I haven't reviewed the Immortals yet, I don't think. So yeah, this is the best grade so far, and I ended up giving him an 8.6 as his fag. Up next is the 91 overall David Wright. And David Wright, last year, man, he was probably the best player on my team last year whenever he was in my lineup. But because his attributes didn't really look like they would play all that well, I didn't play him a ton until the end of the year. And I'm reluctant to grade this card the way I'm about to because I have a feeling I might make that mistake again. But I do feel like right now, until I get him in my hands, I have to err on the side of caution and say that 64 power versus righties is going to hold this card back just a little bit. it's gonna make it to where this card is not as valuable as people want it to be. Obviously, this is a very solid card. 90-64 versus right, 114-84 versus lefties with 73 vision. He's got good defense. He's fairly speedy for a third baseman, or at least he can steal bases fairly well for a third baseman. Overall, that's the type of player you generally want. But that 64 power, it's very hard for me to get past that because I know how important power is in this game. I would also like it if he had higher vision, because I know that you know, if you want a decent size PCI right now, you've got to get that vision up into like the high 80s or so, or you're going to be working with a slightly, you know, a less than ideal PCI in size. There are just a few things. It's like this card is very good at everything, but he doesn't excel at one thing, and I could get by with that if he also had average or above average power versus righties. But since he doesn't, I can't give this card the fantastic grade that I wanted to whenever I found out that David Wright was coming back into the game. So for those reasons, I ended up giving this card a 7.5, but that grade, that's with the stipulation that grade could go up a little bit once I get this card in my hands. I've just got to feel what this card's like, what it's all about once I have him in my hands. Okay, finally, this is the reward that we're going to get whenever the new event starts up, and it is the 86 overall Justin Upton. And there is one card, whenever I saw that this card was coming out, there was one guy that came to my mind immediately, and that was the 2016 flashback Jeff Francoeur from a couple of years ago. Everybody will remember that card. He was 99-99 versus left-handed pitching, but he wasn't that good versus right-handed pitching. And it made for a really interesting card that a lot of people would put on their bench, and they would play him versus lefties and would have one of the best hitters in the game and then just sit him and forget about him whenever they were facing a right-handed pitcher. And I feel like this card is going to have similar utility, even though we don't really get to see our opponents, their handedness, their pitcher's handedness before the game. You can easily sub this guy in or something. So if you have a guy that's really platoon heavy in the outfield that you don't feel comfortable hitting lefty on lefty with, this is the guy for you. This is probably the best option in the game right now to platoon with him. Now, you do run the risk of later on in the game him bringing in a righty, and this Upton's really not all that great versus righties, only 73-56, but it's not like he's totally incompetent, so I think the trade-off would probably be worth it. Now, is this card going to be worth the grind to go out and get him? I don't know about that, but, you know, it is an option if that's a player that you might need on your team. He's also decent defensively, and he's got a pretty strong arm, and he's got a little bit of speed to go along with it. So pretty nice card overall. Very, very platoon heavy though, so just keep that in mind. And because of that, I ended up giving him a fag of a 7. Wait, no, that's a different guy. A 6.9. I ended up giving him a fag of a 6.9. I think he has a lot of utility, but I do think that he has some holes in his game. But okay, guys, that is going to do it for this video. Please like if you enjoyed the video. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe. I would really appreciate it. Leave a comment. Those help me out a ton. And yeah, I love you guys. I will see y'all later. But until then, peace.